If you're like most other people, you probably had a pretty busy day yesterday. You may not have had a chance or even the inclination to read any news headlines. Let's say you got home in the late afternoon, early evening, you kissed the wife, pet the dog, grab a beer, not necessarily in that order. You put your feet up in your easy chair and you think, hey, I've got cable television. What say we turn on one of the news channels and catch up with the events of the day, shall we? So you turn on one of the cable news channels, it doesn't matter which one, and you're puzzled to see everybody on the air practically having a Meg Ryan when Harry met Sally style public orgasm over some event that transpired today. But whatever could it be? Did peace break out in the Middle East? Did China have a non-violent democratic revolution? Is there some unexpectedly great bit of news on the economic front? So you keep watching, you're riveted now, frankly. You want to know what momentously positive event has taken place that warrants such celebratory histrionics. But that's strange, you say. The event they're talking about is some missiles hitting Poland and killing some Poles. And they're saying Russia did it. And Poland is a NATO state. So if it does wind up being Russia that did it, and it was a deliberate act of aggression on their part, then the whole world could be standing on the precipice of a third world war and quite possibly wholesale thermonuclear Armageddon. Sure, it's a strange thing to celebrate, but have you seen the news media lately? It is full of some very strange people. So, for most of the day yesterday, they told us that some missiles hit Poland and some Poles got killed. And there is no confirmation of who's responsible, but Russia did it. Russia totally did it, just like they sabotaged their own gas pipeline. Those Russians are such sneaky, evil bastards. And we are the professional journalists here, folks. So when we confidently assert that when a thing happens in the world and it's bad, then Russia did it, you can trust us. Well, either Russia did it or Trump did it, obviously, one or the other, sometimes both. So, for a period of 14, 16 hours, give or take, there was much rejoicing in media Democrat land because this is their fondest dream realized in true living color. This is great. We no longer have to content ourselves with a lame proxy war. Now we can have an honest-to-goodness nuclear exchange with those rusky cocksuckers. Time to show that vodka-drinking midget son of a bitch what happens when you shut down Burger King and refuse to wave the rainbow flag over the Kremlin. But in the end, like many joyous events that proved too good to be true, this one was also too good to be true. It turns out they were Ukrainian missiles. Whoopsie! That fell on Poland. Wait, let me amend that. They were U.S. missiles bought with U.S. taxpayer dollars that were fired by Ukrainians. And since he's the president of the goddamn country, one would have to conclude or at least suspect that Vladimir Zelensky probably knew the truth of what happened sooner than just about anybody else did. But that didn't stop Mr. Zelensky from spending his entire morning writing bellicose, saber-rattling tweet after bellicose, saber-rattling tweet about how the Ukrainian people condemn this monstrous act of Russian barbarism. We stand with the Polish people and we cry out in one voice for righteous vengeance. Let's go kill every single one of those chess-playing, moose and squirrel-chasing motherfuckers right now. And again, this was, in all likelihood, after he knew perfectly well that the missiles were his. And the fact that they hit Poland was a result of the incompetence of his own forces, of which he is the supreme commander-in-chief. But he thought it would be fun to spend his day trying to start World War III anyway. I tried to give this guy the benefit of the doubt. Yeah, you want to give a guy the benefit of the doubt when his country gets invaded, but after this act of reckless, possibly world-shattering lying and duplicity, I don't trust this dipshit any more than I trust Putin. At least Putin isn't doing photo spreads for New York fashion magazines and making appearances on Hollywood awards shows, and generally conducting himself more like an American celebrity than an Eastern European war leader, but maybe that's just me. Even though he hoaxed this thing like he was fucking Jussie Smollett, I'm happy to report that the U.S. Congress decided, just to be safe, to send our boy Vladimir another $40 billion. And what are we up to now? Something between $700 billion and $1 trillion on Joe Biden's proxy war with Russia? Hold on. Let me do a quick calculation. Fun fact, we could have built 37 border walls with what we have spent on Joe Biden's proxy war. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Your government's priorities, writ large. I trust that you are all softly humming the battle hymn of the Republic right now. From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where we may be a bunch of primitive brutes, but we know the first rule of warfare is always hit the country you're aiming for. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. Welcome to the program. I'm your eponymous host and humble servant, and with all due respect to Brian May, Roger Taylor, John Dinkin, and the late Freddie Mercury, all I hear is Radio MAGAGA. Make America great and glorious again. I don't even know if it's a real slogan or just a phrase that he tossed out there casually, but it doesn't matter because I love it and I am keeping it. And if you people are not careful, I may even do a parody recording of Radio MAGAGA. Radio Magugu. Radio Mababa. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you know if there's only one thing you can rely on this program for, it is relentless, sunny optimism. And it's with that spirit in mind that I say the following. No matter how bad things get in the coming months, no matter how embarrassing the performance of our mentally enfeebled, semi-cadaverous president, no matter how many times you nearly freeze to death this winter because you can't afford to heat your home, take solace in the fact that for the next 2 full years, the next 720 glorious days, Donald J. Trump will be a candidate for president. I've heard a lot of commentators on the right today just thinking themselves into pretzel shapes over the timing of the announcement. Oh, it's far too early. This is such a bad strategic play. Harumph, harumph, harumph. And you have to chuckle sometimes because no matter how many years it's been, and it's been 7.5 the last time I checked since the day he came down the golden escalator and gave a fun speech about Mexican rapists, talking heads on the left and the right alike insist on trying to apply the traditional forms of political calculus to the things that Donald Trump does. And no matter how many times he defies it, no matter how many times they wind up being just spectacularly wrong, they continue to persist in the attempt. And they do it in their own continuing discredit, which I guess is their business and their prerogative. For if there's anything we can say with total certainty at the 7.5-year mark of Donald Trump's career in politics, it is that he is a highly aberrational, once-in-a-lifetime figure. Well, I'll go farther than that. Let's say once every couple centuries figure, and the normal rules do not apply to him. So if he was some other guy not named Donald Trump, then yeah, it would be a dumb play to announce your presidential candidacy 1 week after the previous midterm. Basically the earliest announcement in recorded history. Except for the time Stacey Abrams announced she was going back to the buffet table, but that's neither here nor there. But Donald Trump, he is not insert Republican candidate name here. He is Donald Trump. He's also attempting to do a thing that hasn't been attempted since 1912 and arguably since 1892, depending on what your technical parameters happen to be, which is to say, as far as a former president trying to regain the office while he is not currently occupying it. Now, Theodore, don't call me Teddy or I'll pugilize a big hole in your face, Roosevelt, 1912, tried to regain the office because his hand-picked successor, William Howard Taft, wound up being what we would call today a squishy rhino. Let's say he was a 400-pound Edwardian-era version of Willard Romney. So he goes to the GOP convention, Roosevelt does, and he says, God damn it, I'm Theodore Roosevelt. I am the greatest man you will ever meet. I have spent the past few years hunting big game in Africa, wrestling crocodiles in Central America, and sailing down uncharted, pestilential rivers in the Amazon. But you know what? I'm bored with all that now. I want to do something dangerous. So I think it's time to get back into politics. And yeah, sure, I know you've got a Republican president already in office, but I'm going to need you to get all the way up off my back about that and just give me the nomination this year instead of that goofy tub of lard who had to have the fire brigade pry his fat ass out of the bathtub. And did I mention that I'm Theodore Roosevelt? But the GOP, and it was just about the most disastrous decision a party has ever made. They were having none of it. They didn't want TR. They wanted to stick with Taft. So Roosevelt forms the Bull Moose Party. He peels off the same 18 or 19% of the national popular vote that Ross Perot peeled off in 92, and the presidency gets duly handed to Woodrow Wilson, the ramifications of whose misdeeds are still being felt acutely right up to the present day. So Roosevelt to Trump, it's not really an apples to apples comparison, since Roosevelt wound up running as a third-party candidate after he failed to secure the Republican nomination, which I don't think Trump would do. Which, technically, in a manner of speaking, he already had a chance to do, because, damn it, I spent the entire year of 2019 and most of 2020 saying Trump should renounce the GOP and he should run for re-election with no party affiliation. The lack of support by a party to its own sitting president, it's been shocking and unprecedented, and they need him a hell of a lot more than he needs them. And what better way, what more fitting way for Trump to underline his name in the history books than by being the man who finally smashed the 150-year stranglehold of the Democrats and Republicans. But enough of my wistfully mawkish, idealistic daydreaming. Like I was saying, in order to find a direct comparison to the feat that Trump is attempting of an ex-president regaining the office 4 years after having lost it, allegedly, you have to go back to Grover Cleveland in 1892. And you know what else Cleveland and Trump have in common? They are the only two men from New York City ever elected to the presidency in their own right. Chet Arthur was also from New York City, but he was never elected. He just finished out Garfield's term, so he doesn't really count. You'd think there would be more presidents from our country's largest city, but there are not. You've got, 8 or 9 presidents from Ohio and only 2 from New York City? Kind of a weird quirk of history, if you ask me. Now, I've heard a lot of people remarking today that they thought Trump's announcement speech was strangely understated somehow. Even perhaps too understated. But here again, I think this is just people trying way too hard to analyze things that are not particularly noteworthy and don't really warrant any analysis. In fact, it would seem pretty bizarre if Trump tried to use this announcement yesterday as an opportunity to recreate the vibe of the June 2015 announcement at Trump Tower. But it would be lame and tone deaf if he tried to do that. In June of 2015, he was an insurgent outsider who many people thought wasn't even a serious candidate, who was trying to make a big splash and interject himself directly onto the center stage of national politics. Today, he is a man who has already been the president, so it would be rather wildly inappropriate to announce his candidacy in the same way that he did 7 years ago, with the golden escalator and the people waving the signs and the cheering and no teleprompter, no prepared text. We're just winging this thing. You can do that when you're Donald Trump, celebrity billionaire who would like to be president, but you can't do it when you're Donald J. Trump, 45th president of the United States, who would also like to be number 47. So I thought it was perfectly fitting and appropriate that he should do the announcement in a small room among family and close friends, and that he should mostly stay on the prompter and speak in a normal voice. I know we all love it when he goes off the prompter, but there are times when the prudent course of action is to stick with the prepared text and not engage in any sort of Trumpian bombast. There's a time and place for all that. There will be hundreds, literally hundreds of campaign rallies between now and 2 years from now. But for this occasion, in this moment, when you're announcing 720 days out from the election, I think the tone he struck was probably just about the right one. And when he did go off the prompter, it wasn't to attack the people who had wronged him, and it wasn't to complain about what happened in the last election, which was good. It was to make self-effacing jokes at his own expense. That's a quality that he didn't possess, not in any great abundance in 2016, but he cultivated it over the course of his presidency, and it's a valuable asset now if he uses it. Slowly but surely, he started coming off less like the vainglorious, thin-skinned egomaniac who rails against every perceived slight, and he gained the ability to make jokes at his own expense. It's a skill that Ronald Reagan used to great effect. If there is anything Americans love, it is a great man who can poke fun at himself. I think Trump can be a better candidate, possibly a much better one, in 2024 than he was in 2016, and the newfound penchant for self-deprecation is only a part of the reason why. A lot of people are trying to write his political obituary today because, of course they are. And it's all the exact same people you would expect, all the first ballot inductees in the lame, squishy Rhino Hall of Fame. But here's the cold, hard truth. Donald Trump is the most popular and the most widely trusted political figure in the United States today, and it is not a particularly close contest. Moreover, he will be the Republican nominee in 2024, irrespective of who else decides to throw their hat in the ring. You can mark that down. Not Ron DeSantis or anybody else is going to defeat Trump in the primaries. It is not going to happen. And what a lame exercise in wishful thinking that any fake news performance artist should think they can gleefully write Trump's political obituary just because he lashed out at a couple of Republican governors whom he shouldn't have lashed out at. Look, DeSantis, he gained such and such number of points on Trump in so-and-so poll, when he's not even a declared candidate, and it's 2 years until the election. It's all over now, folks. That's it. The game's in the refrigerator. The door is closed. The light's out. The butter's getting hard. The jello's jiggling. The walls are closing in on Donald Trump. It's the beginning of the end. He's over, finished, done with, kaput. But you know what the funny part is of all that? The people who yell the loudest about how much they hate Trump, the mainstream corporate fake news performance artist types, they are the ones who most fervently wish in their heart of hearts that Trump gets returned to the White House. Because Trump being the president is the only thing that gets their ratings out of the toilet. You may have noticed, because it's fairly impossible not to, that even though he's been out of office for nearly 2 years now on the leftist cable news channels, they talk about Trump 2 to 3 times as often as they talk about the man who is currently the president, allegedly. And I need to reiterate that I am deadly serious about this MAGAGA thing. I think we can make it stick if we really try and put our minds to it. And I'll tell you why this is so important to me. Because I would like to one day live in a world where I get to listen to President and semi-animated cadaver Joe Biden give a primetime address on the existential democracy-wrecking threat that our country faces from super-duper ultra-mega MAGAGA Republicans. Can you even imagine what might come out of his mouth if he tries to say all that? It might be almost as much fun as that time he went to Cambodia and said, "It's great to be back in Colombia." Thank you very much indeed for watching. I will not get offended if you like and subscribe. Fan mail is also appreciated, but please, no more bras and panties. I'm running out of space in the house, and a storage unit really isn't in the budget right now. Have a pleasant tomorrow. I'll see you Friday. Do not comply. Get off my lawn.